allows you to secure a little bit more money up front, if you will. We also included in there a couple of alternate bid items for the systems integrator and then also for the pressure filter. In all three bids, Tonka was the low bid, and there was adder prices there for Westech, and no other integrators actually did the project, just LED. So our recommendation is to award the contract to C.D. Smith for $3,058,142, which would include then that base bid allowance and then also the supplemental bid items.
How much of that is covered by the grant?
So the grant, as it was written, was for $714,000 and change. We have reached out to the DNR looking for them to, because prices came in higher than we had originally estimated. We reached out to the DNR and said, you had committed for X percent, which is 25%. And with prices being higher, can we count on you to extend that 25%? We got an email back just this morning that said it's all, in all likelihood, they will in fact raise that grant amount to be
25% of 3 million.
So that would be $943,000, because the grant is not only for the construction cost, it would also include your engineering costs for both design and construction. It would also include allowances in there for bond counsel, soils testing, and other ancillary costs associated with the project, any legal fees that you have, etc.
What kind of filters in there now? Is it, you mentioned Tonka, isn't that what's in there now? No.
Right now you have 2 Tonka filters and 2 general filters. General filter was bought by Westech, so it's the same technology, it's just under a new name. We feel comfortable with both of those filtration systems, so we bid them as equals and allowed the contractor to write in whichever one they had for low pricing. But that being said, we also always like to know, so that if someone had their heart set on Westech, we would at least have a price there to increase that cost.
And do we care who?
As long as it does its job, and I know Tonka, when they have to come and look at something, it's very costly. I don't know what Westech costs.
They're not inexpensive either. Neither one of them has been shy as far as their pricing for service calls.
There are contractors that are familiar with their product locally as well.
Yeah, so locally, I think you tend to see more Tonka filters, and where it has gotten out in the contracting world about Tonka's pricing as far as on service. So there are more and more contractors that are willing to come out and help you with, if you're going to have a failure on a filter, the mechanical things are pretty straightforward. It's a failed valve, a failed solenoid, that kind of stuff. The controls are a little bit more of a black box, but that being said, Tonka is the larger player in that market, at least locally, and I would feel secure in saying that more of the integrators are going to be more familiar with the controls of that Tonka system.
And what is their delivery time on that?
We have not seen that yet, but during design, we were being told about 6 months after submittal review.
Now, is this tying in any of the SCADA system, or is that?
Yes. So as part of the project, we are also upgrading the SCADA system throughout the water network. So we're addressing that at 3 other plants in both water towers, replacing the PLCs and the touch screens at each of those, as well as radios and antennas.
For that price?
For that price, it's all included in the price. The reason that we included that, we understand that you have 3 other filters, all in various levels of need. We also had talked to staff about the benefit of, right now your water and wastewater systems are tied on the same network. There is an opportunity here to separate them because you're looking at major projects in each area. And it's advantageous advantageous to the city to separate those at this time.
Is there an appeal process if we don't get the 25% increase in the grant?
There is, you're basically standing in line with everyone else, holding up your hand, asking for the additional funds. So the DNR they're comfortable in saying, look, we've got additional money to loan, so we can cover the difference on the loan. Generally speaking, any of the principal forgiveness or grant money that is unused by any of the other communities throughout the state goes back into the pool and then gets allocated based on a needs assessment for each community. And it's looking like there's not, like, basically that everyone's not gonna use up the money this year. That there's projects that are being held back, some are stalling out, some are seeking additional or alternative funding sources, albeit like rural development or something like that. So reading the tea leaves, it looks like there's gonna be left over in that pool, and your project falls, I think you're 10th or 12th on the list as far as priorities.
So you'll be following up to,
We've already followed up with them, and we've received word that we will likely receive the 25% match.
and ARPA money doesn't affect any of this?
No, the ARP money does not. What we are having to deal with though is what's called BABA, which is Buy America, Build America funding. And at this point, the only requirement on the project is that we have to put, the contractor has to put a sign up that shows that it is funded through the program. Beyond that, anything that is steel will carry the AIS requirements, which is American Iron and Steel, for any of the filter, for the valves, for the piping, that kind of stuff.
Well, I'll make a motion to,
I got one more question, sorry.
what's that?
One more question. So CD Smith will be responsible for hiring out their subcontractors, right?
Yes.
I guess my point is that, and it's probably hard to do that, they should use local contractors if they can.
So as
But
part,
that's probably not anything we can do about it.
as part of the bid solicitation, we do include what we call Schedule C, which is a subcontractor list. For the site work, CD Smith was going to do all of that themselves. They were doing their own concrete. They are using R.G. Schmidt for the exterior site piping work. They're using August Winter for interior process piping, for the plumbing and for the HVAC, and then Haiti Electric on the electrical.
I can say it was really, really difficult on the lead project to use local contractors because of the DBA certification, and I think that was about it. So they wanted disadvantaged business solicitation, which if you look up plumbers and contractors that are with that designation, they're coming from Milwaukee. So I pretty much told the DNR that I'm never gonna get our project done if we're running people from an hour away every day to, pull 2 laterals. So they accepted ours, but.
We oftentimes will see on projects like this where, while there's qualified individuals, let's just say qualified HVAC contractors locally, at times they want nothing to do with a project like this because there's prevailing wage rate requirements on it. There's a whole submittal review process, and they're like, what do we do with this?
Too small.
It's understanding the process and knowing how to keep this played.
Sorry, Bob.
CD Smith they built not much good to us anymore, but they built Shopko that they were very professional. And everything was, all the subcontractors worked in coordination. It was almost seamless, so. Anyway, I will.
CD Smith for other projects going on at the same time. You don't think they're gonna spread themselves too thin or anything like that?
They're a large contractor with plenty of resources, so we've been working with them on a number of other projects. They have kept things moving. We have one project that, no fault of the general contractor, they have a plumbing contractor they're having to drag along get the work done. But otherwise, they've been excellent to work with.
Yeah, the two top bids are pretty close to each other. We don't have to take the lowest, or the two lowest bids. We don't have to take the lowest bid if we have any reason to favor one over another. There's no requirement to take the lowest bid. In this case, I would agree that CD Smith is probably the best choice, and I will make a motion to accept their bid based on the recommendation of Town and Country, noting that we're anticipating a 25% increase in the state's participation in the DNR's participation.
We have a motion, we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Questions? Mike, you look like you're thinking. We'll take roll call on that.
Alderperson Bob Smith,
Aye.
Alderperson Roger Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Engel,
Aye.
Commissioner Casper,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Bush.
Aye. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When will it be done?
June of 25, 24. June of 24.
Next on the agenda, if I can find it.
Yeah, that one.
That's not-
First.
Presentation and discussion regarding wastewater facilities planning by MSA.
I'm gonna stand over here of the presentation, if that's okay?
I'm gonna make sure the owl catches them with the sun.
I'm pretty loud,
Walk over
so
there.
my trusty assistant Rahim here will advance the slide. Thanks everybody for having us here. We're kind of at the end here finally with the facilities plan. Good to see everybody again. Roger, good to meet you. It's been a pleasure to meet you before. Great, MSA. So we met with the utility, Courtney and her staff a few weeks ago to kind of go over this same thing in detail and kind of make sure we're on the same page with staff with our recommendations and that it answers all the questions that they have and all the needs that they have. And then we're aligned there. I think we walked away with some consensus there on what we were doing. So I wanted to have generally that same meeting with you and get your thoughts and feedback. Just as a housekeeping item, I'm not requesting any action tonight, just a discussion and probably some direction as we kind of finalize the plan. So from a schedule standpoint, we're about done with the plan, subject to the discussion here tonight. And the next formal action that we would need to take is hold a public hearing. That's the DNR requirement on the facility plan. Tentatively, we were thinking about doing that next month, like before this meeting, to have the public hearing, post that and put that in the paper with the class 2 notice and do all of that. So we want to make sure, like I said, we've got your guys' thoughts and wishes and desires into this plan as well, and that we have alignment before we publish that plan for the public to review and comment upon. So with that, I also, Courtney, did they get this packet?
The public hearing.
The fact sheet. So this will be the same fact sheet we have for the public hearing next month, but it really gives a lot of detail. So I boiled that down a lot in this presentation, and I'll try to boil a lot of it down in my presentation. But if you've had a chance to look at this or will look at it, feel free to interject with some questions and comments, because a lot more detail is obviously in here as well. And will be even more detail in the full report as well. And I think you also have a couple site layouts and maps to help as well, but that's in the presentation as well. So with that, we'll go to the first slide here. So I always like to present in the form of what the questions that we're asking ourselves. Why a facility plan and why now? So there's five main reasons I wanted to talk about. Equipment and facilities are ranging from 20 to 40 years old, a lot of it being more so 40. You've obviously done some things sooner than that, but when you have a facility of that age, you have a higher risk of failure and permit non-compliance and just an increased difficulty with O&M. I think talking with the staff quite a bit, there's a lot it takes to maintain the older facility and the older equipment. Number two is the influent flows have exceeded the peak plant capacity. You have a history, a documented history of SSOs, sanitary sewer flows, and TFOs, treatment facility upgrade, overflows. So we have to address that. That's number two. Number three is maintenance deficiencies. A lot of the discussions we've had, and we'll have this, some of this centers around the administrative building and the maintenance spaces. The facility not provide sufficient workspace and storage for the utility department based on the discussions that we, in our review there. Number 4, future operational cost uncertainty. So you guys spent significant money on chemical and also significant money in biosolids hauling. And you're also related to that with the risk factor of your dependence on other entities of taking your biosolids as well. So that's the reason why we are looking at this. And also finally, kind of, as Greg talked about a little bit, is it's a favorable funding environment. A lot of times these projects go forward, not necessarily when they're absolutely needed, but when there's the best funding opportunity in front of you. And so with the bipartisan infrastructure law, or the bill, what we call it, there's a lot more on the grant available. And actually, I think last year the DNR had like $50 million of grant available on the clean water side, and only handed out 40 of it last year. So there's even excess available. So now is a good time to be moving forward. So those are the 5 reasons why we're doing this now, and the questions we're trying to answer and solve for you here. The next slide. So I'll go through each of the areas of interest, and the sessions includes the entire plant. And there's obviously a lot more detail in here that I'll probably reference as well. So what are the identified deficiencies of the plant? We've talked about this before, but I'll kind of go through this again. Fine screen, the influent fine screen. Not only does it have poor performance, it doesn't capture a lot. How do we know that? Well, you guys have another screen in that facility, a secondary screen that was installed several years ago to catch more of the solids. So that's evidence that this is not doing its job. Further, it's not rated for the capacity you guys need to get water through the plant. You guys have seen backups in this building. Part of that's due to the pumping, part of it due to this fine screen. So the screen does not perform very well, and also is not of sufficient capacity either. So that's an item we're looking to be replaced as part of the project. And then next thing is raw wastewater pumping. Simply, the pumps are not big enough to pump the water that's coming to the plant. You guys have seen that with overflows and backups as well. So we're looking to upgrade the size and capacity of those pumps. Grit removal. Grit removal is an item we've talked about that we could probably spend a lot more money on. We could completely replace and upgrade that process and capture a lot more grit. But really, grit is more of a maintenance item and really comes down to the needs and desires of the maintenance staff. And so we kind of nixed a major upgrade to try to allocate money in other places. But what we have included in here is more of a refurbishment of the current aerated grit system you have. New blowers, a new grit classifier, which basically takes the water out of it and dewaters it a little bit. So we tried to save some money on that process as well. Aeration basins. So the aeration facility out there relies on 40-year-old centrifugal blowers with coarse bubble diffusers. You guys are wasting a lot of energy out there blowing air into those aeration tanks. It does it very inefficiently. So we're looking, and also just the age of them as well. So we're looking to upgrade the blowers and the aeration equipment and really upgrade to a biological nutrient removal system. We think based on our models and the study that we have done, we can make biological phosphorus removal work out there. And the implication of that is that's going to reduce your chemical usage. You're not going to have to rely so much on chemical to remove phosphorus. You're going to get the bugs to do it for you. And so what happens, then it ends up in the bugs that settle into biosolids. So that's a recommendation there. And you'll see the cost implications that we're estimating for that later. Secondary clarifiers. So by code, the clarifiers are undersized. However, we did some more detailed analysis, and we also looked at your historical data. And really the size of the clarifiers and the clarifiers you have performed well despite not being technically by code of size it should be. So actually we're not at this time recommending additional clarifiers. It'd be significantly more money to add clarifiers out there. And we're pretty confident that the clarifiers you have out there can perform at the flows that you have it at. So we're not actually recommending additional clarifiers at this time. We have an estimate for it. It's not included in the final estimate, but we're not including it. So that will be a justification. We have to provide the DNR and provide our shore notes as to why we don't think that that's necessary. But we think we're confident we don't have to invest in additional clarifiers out there at this time.
Could clarifiers be added at a later date and we could discover it as a piecemeal or line item?
Absolutely. And actually the way that the facility was designed was under the idea that clarifiers could be added out there.
There's piping available, right? And then
Yeah.
clarifiers.
If you kind of look at the map there,
Yeah, I get it.
you can see there's a 2 there. You can actually put 2 to the north of it there. So they're kind of designed to add it. If you ever need to, it can pretty piecemeal item there.
Thank you.
It's a good question. All right, next slide. Around him. UV disinfection. So this is another one where technically, it's undersized, but it's performed very well, even under the high flows that you've had it. So we're not proposing that. This is another one that could be piecemealed onto later if it became necessary down the road. We know that the controls need to be replaced out there. The controls are not, they need to be upgraded. The screen, you can't even read it anymore. The sun has kind of got to it. So we're gonna update the controls for that, but we're not gonna add new bulbs and those kinds of things. The data shows that you guys have been able to meet your E. coli limits historically, even at under peak flow conditions. So we're pretty comfortable with that. Okay, so solids processing. So here's one to talk about in a little bit more detail. So we looked at, so right now, you guys have your small storage tank or digester out there, and you contract haul twice a week, right? You contract haul, you pay at 7.5 cents a gallon now, right?
Yes.
For biosolids hauling, okay? So there's two things. That's expensive, right? You're paying somebody to haul it all the time, and you're paying someone else to take responsibility of it, right? Because you don't have the storage. Typically, or traditionally, what the DNR code says is it's short of having a contract to do such a thing, you need to have 180 days of storage. And the idea of 180 days is that you can get to the spring and the fall time where you can direct land apply. Because it's more cost effective, right, is to haul it right to the land and land apply biosolids as opposed to having someone else take the responsibility of it, as you guys have kind of done traditionally. So, so that's option one. And we actually looked at what would it look like to continue that process. So there's a cost aspect to that as well, but there's also kind of a indirect cost impact and uncertainty and risk part of this. What happens if the facility hauled to now decides that we can't take it anymore? Then what? Right? So you have an uncertainty and a lack of control part of this as well that doesn't show up directly in the numbers, but we'll talk about how it would show up in the numbers. Essentially, let's say if it's not 7.5 cents anymore, what happens if it's 8.5, 9.5, 10.5? Because you have no control. They could say this is what it costs, right? So you have no direct control over that. If you lose it, because you guys have had that experience of losing a facility to take it to, right? You've had that experience and costs went up. What happens if and when that happens again?
Yep.
Okay, so we looked at several options. So if you are in your packet there's page 6. We looked at 6 alternatives there for biosolids in the future. We looked at basically upgrading the equipment you have now and continuing the contract haul. We looked at upgrading the equipment and adding storage tanks, liquid storage tanks. And those would be what we've shown, and Ryan, maybe you want to go to the map in the presentation. Up on the top of the hill there is the likely spot. And the reason why we really like that spot is then we would, those trucks don't have to come into the plant. They could go around, we would, they go circle through and go back out when you did have an event. So the way that would happen is in the spring or the fall, you have a cadre of trucks coming in and hauling out and getting it out and right to the fields and land apply it. So you'd have several trucks coming in at a finite, shorter amount of time. And so the idea would be is they come in and take the road and circle around and go out, and that would be the flow.
The theory is then they're gonna be paying less than 7.5 cents.
Absolutely. And the estimate that we've used is 5 cents for the purposes of estimating 5 cents. And you'll see how.
I talked to our current contractors and they gave me a number closer, 5 cents is probably more accurate, but they gave me a number closer to 4 if it were to be.
We tried to be a little conservative, but
Right,
yeah.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So
But
we
that's
did
the
it-
fact.
We did it tomorrow, it'd be 4 cents.
Right. So that's basically, your 7.5 cents, you're paying 4 cents to the hauler and 3.5 cents to the people who are taking it. That's essentially what you're doing now. So that's what I'll call option 2. Option 3 was, how do we make the storage facilities smaller? How can we take more water out of the sludge to the biosolids to basically, under the idea it costs money to have the wheels underwater, right? The more volume you have, the more it costs. So we looked at thickening it. Basically, it's still a liquid process, taking some of the water out. We looked at dewatering it and making cake. I know Courtney's not a big fan of cake. It can be messy and sticky. And then we even looked at a dryer, which basically takes it up to 90% solids, more or less, what almost would look like a fertilizer product. And that would be, you also see in here where it says Class B versus Class A. The biggest difference there is Class B more or less has to be land applied or landfill. Class A can actually be publicly distributed as a fertilizer, more or less. There's a lot less restrictions around it.
Even with having capacity for storage though, we would still, be hauling less volume because we would be allowing it more time.
Absolutely.
Right, what we're doing right now, it doesn't allow it any time to decant the water off the top and throw it back.
But how frequently to haul it just doesn't settle fast.
It won't settle in the.
Not
time that
all,
we haul.
not only are we paying 5 cents a gallon, we're paying 5 cents a gallon on half the volume.
On water.
Yeah.
Probably not half, but more than what you should be, for certain. So we looked at all those options. So you can see as you look across there, the capital costs range from 2.5 million to 10.5 million. And then we look at the O&M costs, and then we come to what's called present worth. And so what present worth is essentially says, here's, if you had all today, here's all the money I would need to build and operate this for the next 20 years. So almost like a life cycle cost. How much it would cost me to run this, build it and run it for the next 20 years. And you can see actually slightly doing what you do now is a little bit cheaper, but there's a big caveat to that. This assumes things stay at 7.5 cents a gallon. If you run the analysis here, if things go up just half a penny to 8 cents a gallon, it turns into a wash from building the storage system. The next option, option 2, where it says 2% decanted liquid. So any marginal increase in your sludge hauling costs will essentially make those two alternatives equal and provide you that more certainty that you have the storage, you have more control over those things. So you can, the difference obviously is you have to invest more now to do the biosolids storage, but over a life cycle, it actually likely is going to be cheaper, assuming that costs for hauling continue to go up.
Sorry, which one is gonna be cheaper for life cycle?
So not the top row, the second row. It says digester upgrade storage tank, 2% decanted liquid class B.
Okay.
That basically says you're gonna run a similar program as where you have class B liquid, a unprocessed thickened liquid, an unthickened liquid, but you're gonna build the storage to store it to basically get rid of the acceptance costs from the other treatment facilities. Because you can see, we're projecting you're probably gonna save 75 grand a year just in those hauling costs by just having your own storage, right there. And so over the life cycle, it becomes a wash or potentially more cost effective to do that. So when we roll back to the final cost estimate, that's the option we're recommending and included. Even though it's more capital cost now, we think it's the better, less risky and more cost effective over time option for the city.
Getting it down to 5% or 2%?
2%.
2%.
So you're recommending 2%?
2%. I'm recommending 2%. The thickened, as you can see, the thickened option certainly decreases the volume and the O&M costs a little bit, but the thing that comes with thickening is polymer usage. And so that gets off, so some of the savings of volume cost gets offset by polymer and some electricity costs as well. So, basically the lesson here is that Mayville's probably not quite big enough to make some of these more advanced options cost effective. You get to a bigger facility, you see dryers, you see belt filter presses, which you guys had even at one time. The cake program and the dry program, the thickened program start to cash flow better because of the economy of scale that's involved. So at this time, and included in the overall recommendations is the upgrade to the 2% decanted liquid that would basically include building 180 days of storage up on top of the hill.
And that makes sense to me, but I just want to circle back to the economy of scale. So how big how big a city or how big an operation do you have to be before the cakes and that sort of stuff start to make sense? I'm just kind of curious.
Well,
talking about a metropolitan city that's 50,000 before that makes sense?
No, I wouldn't say that big at all. I mean, I would say 10,000 potentially. I mean, there's smaller ones that have it too. Some people just want it. They want the certainty of less volume. There's certainly a lot of facilities that we worked on, I'm sure Greg's worked on as well, that have those. Because sometimes it's not just a direct financial decision with that, like, because you don't, that gets to some of this uncertainty factor of, well, what might cost B in 5 years or what cost B in 10 years.
I mean, intuitively, what I favor something that gets it down to the pretty much the dried state where you can load it an end loader sort of thing.
Right.
So you've got something that's a Class A fertilizer, but you're saying that the operating cost goes up 355%.
So just the labor intensive.
Well, the present worth was, first A, the capital cost is so much, and you go to a dry, you have to dry it. There's a lot of power.
Yeah, I get that. So you have to have polymer to get it that dry too?
Well, so typically when you use a dryer, you make cake first. And to make the cake is where the polymer comes into play. So you make a cake to get it so dry, and then you dry it to make the dry product, essentially.
So you can't get it dry without the polymer addition.
No, not effectively, no.
You made a statement that intrigues me at the beginning, and I'm anticipating a riotous, public hearing, but you said that the way it's cheapest is the way you're doing it now, with some capital outlay for, building and whatever, but you'd rather, but you feel that will likely become surpassed by option 2. What if it isn't? And which way would you drop if you had to cut this project back a little bit?
Let's get through the rest of it, and then we can have that discussion.
All right, because what you said is the way you're doing it now is the cheapest, but it might not stay that way.
If hauling costs stay exactly the same, and I am not gonna stand here and say that that's gonna happen.
It's a difference of half a cent.
Half a cent, it's still a difference of half a cent. Half a cent. But we wanted to show it at the baseline, what you're paying now comparatively,
All
but,
right,
but we'll come back to that, Bob.
We could also throw in the number she actually had for hauling to the field directly now, and it would probably be favorable for option 2.
The 4 cents.
The 4
Well, right, if we put the 4 cents in there instead of the 5, it would be more, so we're using conservatism on the storage tank option, but if we weren't as conservative and used the 4 cents quote she has now, it would already be more cost effective.
Yeah.
So these numbers are estimates, right, as far as what it's gonna cost in the future.
That 4 cent number's gonna go up too.
Well, right, and that's why we use 5, right?
Well, I guess, I know we'll circle back to this, but I was kind of under the impression what we're doing right now isn't working and it's not sustainable. And you're saying it is?
borderline.
I think it's very wasteful, in my opinion.
Well, I
Yeah,
agree, but just a statement that we can keep doing what we're doing, I find disconcerting, because I don't think we can.
I guess I'm certainly not recommending that. I'm just telling you, based on the 7.5 cents number you have right now, it pencils out that way. I'm not recommending that. I think I want to make that clear. In our final cost estimate, we are recommending you build storage. You pursue option 2.
But you're not suggesting we do anything more dramatic than that.
I'm not suggesting that, credit. Just by, if you look at the numbers, the difference in the present value cost is significant for the next level up that you go.
And when you say present value cost, what does that mean?
Present value means that's the amount of money you need to have to build it and operate it over the next 20 years.
Got it, okay.
It's a kind of, you can call it, say, a life cycle, more or less. It's not exactly the same, but you can kind of understand it that way. Because it takes into account the present value of money and discount rate and.
Similar
Return on investment.
Similar to ROI. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, got it.
Correct.
I'm with you.
Any more on the biosolid before I move on? This is kind of the one that has the most options and uncertainty and analysis that was put into it.
An urgency.
And urgency.
If we wanted to add a dryer later on, can you still do that? If we built the additional storage tanks and we got a.
You could, you certainly could. You wouldn't need all that storage if you went to a dryer. But it wouldn't preclude you from doing that. I just, if you look at the numbers, the way that they're looking there, it's just, you'd be spending an extra $6 million in capital.
Yeah, we don't have that.
To build a dryer facility, as opposed to what we're recommending right now. And that maybe this goes back to my statement of, maybe it's just probably not quite big enough to justify, it doesn't have the economy scale. So down the road, Fond du Lac, they're putting a dryer in. That's where this originally came from, because some of the staff went over there and looked at the pilot system they did. They're putting a dryer in Fond du Lac. There's certainly some smaller than that. Wisconsin Dells has a dryer. So that's about a 4 MGD facility. You guys are less than 1. So
Would you, I would say it has to do with geography to a degree too. I couldn't look around, stand in the center of Mayville and say, oh, we don't have any fields around here, so.
that's a really good point.
It might be a hard sell to say we don't have fields to land apply because they're everywhere. We're
And you can
surrounded.
still land apply dry
Yeah.
product too, but, you know, there, for example, we're working with a community up north in the North Woods. There's not farm fields around there. They do up there look at Class A products
Mhm.
because it's not a bunch of farm fields in the North Woods, right? So that's where they have to consider, and dryer's not the only option to get to Class A, but that's where you have to consider some of these private products where you have other end uses besides putting it on a farm field.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah. You're welcome. Okay, you want to go back, Ryan, to where we were on the slides? Okay, service building. So there's a lot of costs in the estimate tied up in the service building, okay? A lot of it is tied to some of the projects that we're doing. So if you want to go to the layout, Ryan, there's a site layout. So one of the things, one of the two main, it's like if you were to stand out there, the biggest two differences we're going to see in our recommendation is this lower building that's right here goes away. Okay. One of the reasons for that is just logistics. This is a choke point in the facility, and it's an older building as well. And so that building is scheduled to go away. And so one of the costs related to this, so this is the service building, what we're calling the service building right here, the main facility across this building, is we're going to where essentially the lunchroom and the showers and all the staff spaces here in this where are we? Eastern side of the building here, the blowers would go there. And those blowers would serve the aeration basins here and also the storage digester tank here. So we'd have blowers in there. So there's costs in there for that. We need to replace the old boiler that's in here. That needs to be upgraded. There's all the electrical here and here for the whole plant needs to be upgraded. The sludge pumps in here need to be upgraded. So there's a bunch of costs in there. Some of the building mods for the grit stuff that's here, those rehab is in there, is in that cost as well. What else, Ryan? What else? HVAC. There's a bunch of HVAC. We need to replace the HVAC in that building. There's a lot of stuff where, and a lot of these facilities that were built in the early 70s, early 80s don't have the same building code that we have now. So when we go through and do these big projects, we have to upgrade these buildings to the modern building code. And a lot of times it has to do with two things: operator safety from sewer gases and also explosion-proof devices. And so we have to provide the ventilation to be able to meet these building code requirements. So there's a lot of cost into basically rehabbing this building to the modern building code requirements that are there. So then let's get to the other big thing here is the administrative building. All right, so we spent quite a bit of time going back and forth looking at different options of what we do with, and the reason I bring this up right now is because it's intertwined with what we do here and what we take out of here ends up over here. So that's kind of why I'm going there now. But this old building here, so we went back and forth with, do we rehab it? Do we get rid of it? Our estimates say that it's probably, if you're going to maintain this building over the long term for, let's say, another 20 to 40 years, you're probably at least need to invest $1 million into this building to keep it going the way it is. So when you consider that it costs $1 million just to rehab it, and also consider, based on the discussions we've had with Courtney and her staff, it really does not provide them with what they need to do their job effectively over the long term, we believe the right decision is to build a new building right here. And so it doesn't just, it solves several things. So Brian, you want to go to this drawing. I think you guys have it, so you can probably see this a little more clearly. So this is just a concept. This doesn't mean this is exactly what this is going to look like, but this is a concept for the purposes to say to Courtney and her staff, does this get you what you need and allow us to put a cost around it as well. So there's a couple things that I know, why did we put it here? I know that, talking to Courtney, it's not, we don't like the public can get into the facility and they need to go up that hill and park up there. That's probably not the safest and most secure thing, and that the public needs to go into the treatment plant to access the utility department. And so we're bringing that forward here. And so we would set this up with fence and such that the public could come in and park up in front and get access to the office and to just talk with the staff as they kind of need to. So that's partly why it's going where it's going. The other reason is because we need to build a new one before the old one goes away. So that's why there. the staff has identified a need for additional vehicle storage and maintenance space. And so, and part of that is because the maintenance space they have now in the service building, it's jam-packed. The ability to do maintenance in that space is also taken up by cars and equipment and such. So the idea is to get a lot of the storage and vehicle storage out of there. And so that space in the other maintenance service building can actually be a true maintenance space to maintain equipment. It allows us to get in there, because the way that the building was designed, it wasn't for maintenance initially anyway, right? There's like the small walls for the chemical containment. We would take all that out of there and really provide the staff with, for the whole utility, the water and sewer utility, to have maintenance in that first floor space of the service building. That we identified there's a need for a bigger and upgraded lab, so we got a lab in there. And then, so as we kind of said previously, where the blowers are gonna be going, takes the staff space where they had the lunchroom and the offices and the locker rooms that were identified as being deficient, and we're putting them in there as well. Okay, so this would be a new utility administrative service multi-purpose building for the utility. So we looked, like I said, we looked at rehabbing the existing building, we looked at this, and we believe that this is the best investment going forward, and really it fixed a lot of the deficiencies the staff identified out there at that facility. Okay?
I would like to have a lot better understanding of what the deficiencies are of the existing building. Because the cost delta we're looking at there is like, well, my gosh, there's a lot of opportunity to look at how we're using existing building, what can be done to it. Just to better understand why we need to spend $5 million on a new building. We talk about place to park vehicles inside out of the weather. I get that to a point, but my gosh, we can throw up a full building a heck of a lot cheaper than that costs. Again, it's a whole lot of vehicle storage, and we talk about the retaining walls inside the existing building for chemical storage. Well, if we don't need those, then why can't we take those out and better utilize the space we have? And that's kind of where my head's going. The other thought I have is if we drop it down to lower levels, what's the risk of flood? Because we're on a river that floods.
Go back, Brian, go to the map again. So that's what this line is right here.
Okay.
That's the identified floodplain and floodway actually out there.
And at what level? 5-year, 10-year, 1,000-year?
I think this is the 100-year.
100-year?
100-year, right here. That's the 100-year boundary, and I'll verify that. I'm pretty sure that's a 100-year boundary.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Why wouldn't you have the lab in the building where the samples are being collected instead of having them in a separate building? You see what I'm saying?
I mean, they're in a separate building now. Right.
But that isn't the most efficient way.
Right.
So put that back over.
Put that where the service building is, where you gather all your samples for raw and final.
We could look at something like that. I haven't thought about that, to be honest. I don't know.
Sanitary thing with some of the operations that are going on with, I don't know.
I think you can control the environment in a lab in that building instead of putting it in a new building like that. Plus, you're gonna save a lot of time gathering all these samples and transporting them over there. It's just a thought.
I'm just trying to think through what space in that service building we would put that in. Because another thing we looked at is, so up above that second level, it doesn't really serve a lot of purpose. It stores some stuff up there. We really don't plan to do anything up there. The only thing that we have in the cost estimate is we know that floor has deteriorated over time. And I didn't talk to you about this yet, Courtney, but we looked at that in a little more detail. We think it's going to be, we can rehab that. It doesn't need to be.
I agree.
Taken off there, because there was a discussion about potentially will this ever last, but that floor is built beefy.
Yeah.
It was built for equipment originally up there, so I think with a little rehab, that floor can be rehabbed sufficiently. There may be a little bit more just testing we could do on it, a little destructive testing potentially, and see how.
We got a quote at one time and it was $29,000 to repair it.
See, that was
The
never
rebar
originally
showing.
designed to store vehicles.
Right.
Just because that back door was added many years after when they got rid of the dry.
Filter press. And I think the assumption was that bringing all the vehicles in there with salt and everything deteriorated
They
that
didn't
floor.
have the floor coated properly when they did that. They never thought of it.
So the idea is that we were just going to rehab the floor that's broken as is, but not invest much more up there. Could that be a lab? Potentially. You know, that's an idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's worth considering. I mean, I'm first and foremost, I want to make sure Courtney and staff have what it is they need to do their job and do it well. But we also have the responsibility of answering to everybody that's footing the bill for this thing here. So it's like, well, if we can repurpose and redo and cut cost out by using what we already got, then we've got to at least think about it.
I 100% agree with you. We looked at, I mean, as we put this in here as a starting point, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
do we,
understood.
for discussion, you know, we looked at that, there's not a lot we can really modify about that current building to get what they've talked about. So that's the thing, you know, is, because a lot of like vehicle storage or things like that, it's really not built for that. And the $1 million I was talking about is just because, I mean, you could talk about all the things that have happened with that building, with the floor and the leaks and the retaining wall and all of those things back there. And I think I'm just trying to supplement the conversation a little bit further here. And maybe where I'm going is maybe that's a smaller building, for example. I don't know.
The HVAC is a big one in that one. So currently it runs from the boiler in the maintenance shop underground.
Right.
To that building.
That's one of those costs in that $1 million to give it its own basic forced air, because right now it's receiving boiler from all the way over here, and that's just really inefficient to do that.
I mean, just intuitively, just, you know, farmer math. If I can spend $2 million on the existing building and it gives Courtney through everything they need, I'd rather do that than spend $5 million on a new one.
I mean, maybe, just to throw it out there, maybe it is, as you say, it's a smaller building just for vehicle storage only, and the rest of the things stayed in the admin building, for example. Certainly something to consider.
I mean, you gotta meet the needs, current needs, we gotta think about what the future needs are gonna be so that, you know.
I think the number one need, and maybe I'll speak for you and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is it is just jammed in here. To do their maintenance and store the vehicles, it's frankly, it's a mess.
Yeah.
And there's a need for more storage space. I know you have identified a need for more space for the water utility. There's a need for more space in general for storage. That's the primary need.
Not a musical chairs type of
Right.
story.
Moving stuff in and out constantly to try to get to A, B, and C, D.
Yeah.
So maybe, so Raheem can go, and I'm just workshopping this as we talk through this. Maybe it's a need for this part, and maybe not some of these things.
Yeah.
Something like
Well,
that.
yeah, you already said that,
You're moving the blowers in and.
or the lab, maybe over to the other building.
Well, right, so that's the thing, the other main need, thank you for reminding me, is the staff. That lunchroom and those showers and the locker room is really deficient over where it is. We need to do something like that.
Yep.
And so maybe that's a small part. Maybe it's not a new lab and new offices, but maybe it's a new, shower facilities, locker room, and a storage space. You know, maybe that's.
I think it'd be really interesting to spitball some ideas on the existing building before we completely kick that to the curb.
Yeah.
What could be done.
Fair enough.
The biggest number on there is the electrical service and spaces. I mean, that's, they are that outdated and that, I mean, there is nothing there that's been done in the last 5 or 10 years that could be salvaged. That's $6 million, a lot of money.
Yes. Electrical is very expensive and very old out there. There's a lot of 40-year-old deficient equipment that you can hardly find parts for.
We can't find
Right.
parts for.
Does that include the generator too? Is that how?
No, the generator we're keeping the generator.
You're talking about the.
That separate building out there,
All the old service boxes and so forth.
all of that.
Well, and we have, did you show them where the manhole with the electrical is filled with water?
There's that too.
Yeah, there's that too. That's a big one. There's a outdoor coming into the plant, there's a manhole cover you can pull, and it's where all the main electrical's coming in, and it's pretty much filled with water most of
So
I mean,
if we did nothing else, we'd have to spend $5 or $6 million upgrading the electric.
right.
Okay.
I mean, there's some conservative assumptions here, right? We want to be conservative at this point. We're assuming that all the electrical feeders have to be replaced. Maybe when we get into design and we get into construction, we find out some of them are salvageable, we save money. But at this point, we don't know that, so we're making a conservative assumption.
But the things we do know to this point are, we're one main breaker at the sewer plant that I got in a warehouse in New Jersey that some, that we're holding it there just in case we need it because it's on borrowed time.
Electrical is one of those things that go most obsolete the soonest and are the cost
I'm
of on
aware
most.
that the planning commission knows half the houses in the city have pushmatic circuits, and they don't even make them, and they were hard, they were.
How about
they
the
were
transfer
obsolete when
switch
they
from
put
the
them in.
generator to the motor? Is that adequate, or is that gonna have to go to
I can't remember what we planned for that specifically.
the transfer station?
I think we think that was okay, but I can check on that. I think we thought, everything we looked at in that building was newer, right? That's been replaced since some of these other things. And so we were gonna try to keep that. Okay, the big finale. All right, go to the costs. 25 million bucks, all right? Let's just get that out there right now, $25 million, right? Now, obviously, if we do something different with the building and those kind of things, that changes. So, a couple things I want to point out with that. The upgrades, primarily with the solids, where we put the storage tanks out there, and we do the aeration upgrade with BioP, biological bus removal, we're gonna save some significant dollars in chemical and hauling costs through these upgrades. Does it pay off? No, of course it doesn't, but if there's upgrades you need because of age and condition that you don't need to be done, you should do them in a way that also tries to save you money in a more efficient manner. So we're actually estimating with that, the 25 million, you're probably gonna save about 90 grand a year in O&M costs. And that even considers additional costs for parts and things like that. We always figure in with new stuff. So, so what do we recommend? How much to pay for it? So then the question is, from there, how do we pay for it? So DNR Clean Water Fund Program, Safe Drinking Water Program using on that project, same thing, other side of the coin, other side of the same coin. We're estimating it's a 20-year loan at approximately 2.2% subsidized interest rate, okay? It's obviously gone up a little bit as interest rates have gone up, but it's still subsidized. You're eligible for 20% PF up to $3 million cap. So you're obviously for the sake of this discussion, assuming 25 million, you're gonna cap out your $3 million, what they call principal forgiveness or grant, right? And then how do you pay the debt service? Well, primarily you would typically do that through raising your sewer rates, okay? So right now, we estimate your current rate per month per REU, a residential equivalent unit, which essentially means your average homeowner, your average user. So obviously some people use more, some people use less. A business or an industry obviously is several REUs. They represent several houses. But the average REU is paying about $29 a month for sewer, okay? For context, that's about 0.5% of the median household income for maintenance. My opinion, my experience, that's very low, right? I mean, you guys have done a good job maintaining and operating your facility for 40 years, and you've been able to keep your rates very low. The flip side of that is at some point, you're gonna have to do something, right? And so when you look at the proposed rates, so we did two rates, let's say you don't get principal forgiveness and WIP. I think the likelihood you get principal forgiveness is very high, but we wanted to show that to you is the rates would go up to about $52 to $56 a month with a $25 million project, like we're estimating. Okay, now, we talked about how do we reduce costs as a placeholder. Your rates would go down about $1.30 a month per $1 million you take out of the project. So $1 million you add, it would change rates about $1.30 a month per average user. So just think about that as you think about the size of the project, okay? So that's, we're estimating what rates would be. So how does that compare? So one thing MSA does is every 3 years, we do a rate survey. We survey all the municipalities in Wisconsin, and the ones that respond, we get about a 50% response rate. We can estimate what people's rates are. Okay, so then maybe right around 5,000 people, you're kind of in the in-between, because typically, based on the size of the community, their typical rates, right? The smaller community is gonna pay typically a higher rate than a bigger community, right? That economy of scale thing, like if you were in Madison or Milwaukee or Fond du Lac, you're probably paying a lower sewer rate than you are in Mayville or wherever, which is a smaller community. So we typically break these up, separate these by size. So in the 5 to 10,000, right now Mayville is about $350 a year right here in the middle. And if you did the whole $25 million, you get towards the top. Well, that's honestly to be expected, because what happens typically is you cycle through. You do a project, and then the people down here, they do a project, and you cycle through. So that's how it compares for 5 to 10. If you go to the next one, 2 to 5, Mayville's more so down here compared to others. And you would go maybe 2/3 of the way up with the $25 million project. And affordability is subjective, but there's some objective measures that we try to use, and I think the DNR tries to use. And typically what they would say is anything under 2% of the MHI is affordable, okay? But, so that means basically 2% of that house's income spent towards a sewer rate, anything below that is affordable. But even with the project, you guys are just only getting about 1%. So yes, it's a big rate increase, but from affordability standpoint, it's really, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that high.
I think I brought that up a couple months ago, but I had a seminar with I think he was like University of Michigan. I don't remember his name, but I gave him this, I emailed him after and I gave him this information too, and he's like, wow, 0.5%. He's like, if you're actually maintaining it, that good for you, but 2% was the number
So the other thing I like
number you're looking for.
to judge, like, okay, that, yes, it's a large increase, I'm not trying to discount that, but even at, let's say, the $56 a month, that's less than $2 a day. If I came to your house and said, hey, I'll take all your wastewater and get rid of it for $2 a day, that sounds like a deal I would sign up for. I know it's a big rate increase, I know 29 to 56 or 52 is a lot, but I still think you guys have done a good job for 4 years and maintained it and operated it well. And at some point, whether now or in the near future, you need to invest in the facility. And I do think it's affordable. Based on the
Doesn't this
measures.
investment offer some efficiency though? My God.
Well, I think we identified that we're gonna save money in chemical and we're gonna save money in electricity.
It's not represented in the projected rate after, doubling the rate. I can tell you this, I've been involved in a couple of, all your numbers make sense, but I've been involved in a couple of public hearings on a couple of, referendums. And I will tell you this, the school referendum, these are German people, and when you tell them, you don't know how lucky you are, but we're gonna double what you have now, you're gonna get some pushback.
I
A
understand.
lot of pushback in this case.
I understand. You're right. It is a significant increase. I don't want to discount it.
Huh?
And it's all gonna be blamed on what, Bob?
On me, no.
No, me, Kikoski Leroy.
So some of it,
Because we accepted Kikoski Leroy, we said we got plenty of room, and they're gonna
So,
look at this and say,
no,
this is
but
why we told you not to do Kikoski Leroy.
the case they're making though is
Yeah,
the plant is shot.
whether we
have
took
to do it sooner or
Kikoski
later,
Leroy or
and How
not.
much of it are we replacing, you know what I mean?
Kikoski Leroy is a small.
But Joe
portion.
Blow's not gonna see that.
That's just a smidgen.
Just a smidge.
I think the one thing they might be overlooking is, besides the efficiencies, you could build that in somehow. But if you could expand, I don't have sewer and water. I live in town, I've got the only remaining land left in the city, it's like
Okay.
70 acres of farmland,
Sure.
but it's not connected to the sewer because it can't be. There is something in my deed that says I'm guaranteed a hookup price if I ever want it, but I have a lot, what would be if we increase the number of customers by 20%, what impact would that have on?
I mean, that would certainly impact it, certainly. We're assuming that, there's obviously we're assuming the existing amount of users on here,
Right.
right? And any new users obviously offsets that.
For the current land on where the utilities are available, we're about built out. We've incentivized some things, we don't have much more to go, maybe some factory land. But we have about, possible 2,000 to 3,000 more residential lots that could be developed on land if it could be serviced. And at one time, there's gonna be a satellite processing plant down there by the river. Anyway, so what could those two yellow arrows, which are gonna cause heart failure by most people, when look at that. How could those be affected by 10 or 15% increase, you're talking 25 years, of customers?
We can run that scenario if you have that many more REUs.
That might be a better way to sell it than tell them that it's costing less than their cable TV.
Fair enough. The other thing that you brought up, the request that reminded me of, we did not in this analysis, and we will need to do this at some point in the future. It doesn't consider any increase of the surcharges or penalties on the industries. Okay, which frankly, a gallon from those industries is a lot more costly to the treatment plant than a gallon from a house. So we did not figure any of that. That's more of a next level analysis. That would certainly obviously decrease the rates. You're going to collect more from the industries for their impact on costs. That's going to offset the costs to the users.
How about a new plant and the opportunity to accept sewage we don't accept now? Would we be in a better position to take, for example, cheese waste or some of the other stuff, or a worse position?
Well, you're certainly going to have a new plant, would be able to better,
Right now, we
handle
can't
something
even
like that.
anticipate some of
What's our
that.
capacity gonna go to?
Do you remember offhand? I don't remember offhand.
Where we talked about septic and holding acceptance.
We talked about septic and holding acceptance, being able to do some of that.
Or what about Theresa? Brownsville?
What about leachate? Remember when they kept bringing that up? Would a new plant be able to handle that efficiently? And
We don't have the population, in my opinion, to handle it. We don't have the.
No, okay,
You know what I mean?
We did not figure leachate
We don't have.
into this.
I'm looking for ways to
Yeah,
sell this rather than saying, you don't know what a deal you got now, but we're gonna take that deal away.
Okay, so that's an option. Something else I was looking at, I talked to Courtney about, and she's not favoring my idea here. Renewable natural gas. It can be done, but I just don't know if it's cost effective for, if you get a return on investment for the size of the operation we have.
It's not, unfortunately, not the size. You've got to build an anaerobic digester to create the gas.
Yep.
And clean it, right?
Yep.
Maybe it's just not the size, being less than 1 MGD of flow, it's just not the size to make
How
that.
how big do you need to be for that to be cost effective? Double?
I'm just trying, at least. I mean, I'm just thinking of the city of Sun Prairie. They've talked about it and they don't think they can cash flow it.
We had
Make it
one in
work.
West Bend with 30,000 people and it was kind of.
Marginal.
Some people harvest it and use it to dry the sludge a little bit.
Yep.
And they can, that is a separate,
That's a whole nother conversation.
Most people that reuse it, use it on site just to heat, use it as heat. You have to create a lot.
are you including any solar in this?
No, I'm not.
Well, somebody, not me, would say, why not?
We can. It's not gonna, I mean, the amount of solar it would take to power this facility would be more than would be cost effective to do it. It would be, could you power a building like from like lights, and you couldn't power a wastewater process
No.
motor with
So
solar
everybody's
power.
looking for a way to offset some costs a little bit. Is pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much it, but we offset it in the wrong direction already because whatever the deal was, 7, 8 years ago, I don't know. Because we didn't do that little incremental change, now we're looking like one of those utilities that is gonna give people small heart attacks and.
So you're saying that 348 should be upward of over 400 now? I agree with that,
Okay.
because we didn't do the changes.
Yeah, I
We
can
didn't
see
do
that, but
right.
627, I'm not,
Right.
you're not gonna get people to, they're gonna, listen, when it comes to something like this, or high school or something like that, you wind up with half the project you started out with, and you get a bunch of people still shaking their heads and talking about moving and all. You have to find a better way to sell
Well, high school got their 50 million.
I think we
They
should
got
hold a
half of what
public
they asked
hearing at
for,
the
don't
treatment
they?
plant.
What's that?
Said I think we should hold a public hearing at the treatment plant.
Good.
I think that would be extremely educational, because I asked Courtney for a walkthrough on there, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. this.
Well, it has to be done, but when you're,
We're playing catch up.
I think you have to sell it with the idea of there are opportunities to offset it with new development, this and that, as much as you can.
Fewer chemicals.
So I don't know about the chemicals.
And I agree with you, the selling is gonna be crucial. The other part of it is that I keep coming back to is, you can only hold the car together so long with baling wire and duct tape before, I don't care how cheap, how expensive a newer car is, you still gotta do it.
Hey, we went through it once before in 1983. It was a sore subject then, and it'll be now.
Look what
The
happened,
big thing there, Gene, will be when they put the wrecking ball to the administration building. Oh, that was a sore subject.
look what happened with Menominee Falls and the place, this things that were on the other side of the subcontinental divide, and they had to buy the stuff from Milwaukee. And some of their sewer bills are higher than their mortgages. And it's not, I mean, yes, this is a bargain compared to that, but you're still dealing with people who are used to what they have right now.
Right.
And you have to find a way to,
Sewage treatment is one of the most expensive things that any municipality invests in, but it's also one of the most essential.
Oh,
The most.
yeah, we,
So where do we go from here?
looking at your water bills too, though, I think what people don't have, for just as perception, what people don't understand is that garbage is also on your water bill. So everybody assumes that's all sewer and water, but
Fire.
it's not.
Fire
But, yeah.
protection.
yeah, the fire plugs, all of that stuff, get that
Yeah.
off of there.
Just perspective wise, it's not all, the cost isn't all
Well,
us.
let's say we add those numbers to the top yellow arrow, then it gets worse.
Well, then we had water, because that's not.
Yeah.
Well, with this, we're gonna end up with 90 and $120
Right.
water bills.
Right, which is typical for western Milwaukee suburbs right now. But that's why people move here, because they don't want $120 a month water bill.
But, I don't know, what are they, 70?
So to answer your question, Bert, where do we go from here? I think the biggest thing I heard is we need to revisit the administrative building and that cost. As far as,
How can we drive some of that cost?
I like Mike's idea of the lab over there, and I like
Lab upstairs.
Roger's idea of the, whole building,
For
storage.
storage.
And then also showers and lunchroom.
So go back to what you said about the $1 million cutout, you said it was $1.30 a month, so.
yeah, so every million, I
Million
guess,
is about-
just every million you cut out of the project would save the average user about $1.33
Come on.
a month in their rates. So just kind of think about that.
That would be better if you were here. But
So maybe Courtney, we can go back, and we can talk and adjust that.
with me,
I think I'd still like to, I mean, I guess I'm asking, could we still to the point where we want to hold a public hearing in April on this plan?
I don't know, isn't that kind of pushing it?
That's just throwing that out there.
That's what you're ready.
If we wanted to go back and revisit some of these costs and then talk about it again next month, and then after that have a public hearing, that's fine too.
I think really look at the storage space down below for the lab. I like Mike's idea.
see, I like designing things from the top down rather than the bottom up. So it means, here's how much we can afford, what can we buy with it? Rather than, we're gonna buy what we need, and we might have a couple of Lincolns parked outside, so if we get everything we need, you can still afford it because it's cheaper than what you're paying for cable TV. I'd rather say, no, we can afford maybe, if the average right now is 400 and something a month for sewer, and we can keep it under 500 if possible, I'd rather design it that way rather than, we're gonna start with everything we need plus, and then we'll start chopping things off. I don't know. I like it. I think we can afford to, we can't afford for everybody to leave, nobody will pay the damn bills. So that's why I say, what can we afford? We're paying $318 now. whatever you say.
Well, so the other thing we didn't talk about within what you're saying there is potentially phasing some things.
Yeah.
If we need to. And that comes into the discussion of what are the most important things we need to do. I think we certainly have to address sludge, and we have to address the flow issue. We can't have TFOs, we can't have overflows. The DNR is not gonna let us do any, if we don't do that, they won't let us do anything. We have to do that. So we're gonna have to address those parts of it at minimum.
And the electrical.
And the electrical, I mean, electrical comes along with a lot of
We've
those
been
things.
putting money aside in a replacement fund, how much is in there?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, that's,
Thing is it-
we didn't figure even any replacement fund dollars either, you know, so there's,
Oh, you didn't?
no.
Oh,
And that's what we did for, we did clarifiers already, we not the,
Okay, but we've been putting money away,
How much?
we knew this was coming.
Right.
And we we got caught with we learned our lesson with water towers, we put too much money away, we had to build the tower.
So you can use the same thing I said before. If you have $1 million in your replacement fund, that would save each user $1.33 a month. Same thing, right?
We're a million bucks.
There's probably a lot of things in that replacement fund that were saved for, that are probably long gone.
Like, we're looking at adjusting, that's a big project.
Right. So there's money there to offset some costs too. So maybe what we'll do, I guess I'm hearing two things. And we can come back next month and have an updated presentation. Revisit the administrative building and how we can reuse some of the existing spaces and downsize that, kind of like we talked about. And then maybe look at some phasing. What are the things we need to absolutely do? And then what things maybe can wait 5 years?
So a lot of things though, if you're doing any sort of upgrade whatsoever, are gonna come with new code requirements,
Yes,
like we have 0 ADA compliance right now. We have
correct,
not much electrical to code.
correct.
We have original 30s, at the pump room down there,
That's gotta come out of there.
venting gases and, there's,
There's a lot
Department
of-
of Health and Safety didn't like us too much.
There's a lot that has to be done. I
Yeah,
get
there's a
that.
lot to
Yeah.
immediately address.
A lot of that is grandfathered in the minute you start.
Well, yeah, if we
doing it,
change
you gotta-
anything,
you gotta
if
update
we change
something.
anything, that's all gotta go. Is there anything with, like a security angle too I know there was grant funding and things like that for, like after 9/11, for fencing in those plants and for keeping everything secure.
I don't think so. The other thing, the other one I just thought of that you mentioned that is, we'll probably be able to get some focus on energy money.
Yeah.
That's not a huge pot, but it's some. By upgrading the pumps, motors, lighting, all those energy efficiency with the aeration and the
Blowers
blowers.
and aeration.
That's gonna
are
give
a
us
huge one.
some good focus on energy grant.
So that's not
None of
accounted
that's
for
figured in there either.
in energy billings either.
What's that?
So energy billings, it's not necessarily accounted for then either.
Correct.
You know what we would.
We
we're
would
not
have an
gonna know
estimate
yet
how
what
much
we're
we
gonna
would save, and so
on
we
a
would have an
monthly
idea of how much grant we could get, right?
Yeah.
I'd be willing to spitball ideas on the current admin building. I come from a manufacturing background. I've done, some of the type of
Sure.
work you do where you look at process flows and how to utilize space and all that kind of stuff. Don't want to step on anybody's toes or get in anybody's way, but
No, certainly not. I think we appreciate the insight. I think we've gone a lot of different ways with that, and how we do it, and
yeah.
maybe we even meet out there, we walk through it or something, talk through it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I can usually find some time during the week, sometime during the day.
Okay, sure.
And the impact charts might be a little better presented, if you included garbage, unfortunately, water and everything else in there, because then the percentage, it doesn't look like such a big increase if you're, because those things aren't going up,
The whole utility bill, this is what you get every month.
Right, and this is what it looks like it might become.
Yeah.
This is scary the way you presented it here. If it gets out, you're gonna have 20 people making, coming to the meeting.
Well, every time I flush the toilet, it's one of those things, I want it to go away.
Yep,
and not be
that's
a
what I
problem.
always say, John. That's what I always say.
You don't think about it, it doesn't flush,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I think as you said on day 2, everything is far past their
Yeah.
expected lifespan already.
I mean, you guys have done a good job maintaining it for as long as you have. It's past what would be expected already.
it bothers me to go in the electrical room and see a fan blowing on the electrical panels to keep them cool enough so the breakers don't trip.
But
That's
I
the problem.
have a breaker from New Jersey in a warehouse just in case it
I-
does, because you can't get it anywhere else.
I know.
Don't forget, we called you because we knew this was coming. That was the whole idea. We called you because we didn't want to call the ones that were typically called. So,
Well, I think that's a good idea. Let's bring her back to next one.
Okay. And I like the, I mean, if we stay on that schedule then and have a public hearing in May. May sounds nice. We can maybe have it at the treatment plant, the public hearing. You really see if people care.
Mhm.
I think that'd be good.
Just don't serve food, treat that.
maybe
I don't think we'd be allowed to.
anytime we have 10 or 20 cars at a time going across that little bridge, I get nervous.
Fair enough.
Somebody's go across the
Yeah, you're fine.
80,000 pound somebody, so.
Ever look underneath there?
Inspect it every year, Dutch County.
Incidentally, thank you for the excellent presentation. I know there's a lot of work goes into this and then all of us throwing darts at what you've done.
Well, that's what I want. I want you guys get to be on board with this as much as I am, right? You know, so I want to represent what you guys want to do.
And well, it really helps you explain what it is you're looking at and what your thought process is. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Very good. We'll leave it at that. Everyone happy with that?
I'm not happy with it.
Well, it's a start. We didn't think that.
No, yeah, excellent start.
Yeah. Next is water report. Minus the main break today. Report on that next one?
What's that?
Report on that next one?
I have the service break, I got it, I didn't get
Oh,
to type them out yet, I had a little bit of a date, but good. Yeah, water report, water main break, center in Wisconsin, we did have on 2/19, that one fixed up the next day. There's consideration, I think, to potential to abandon that in the future if it comes up as a street project. It's just kind of an extra loop where it broke. And there's some old bands in there already, so if it would come up on a street project, we would consider that, abandoning that in the future, I guess. Service break today, on Dayton, they have that fixed up for now. Well, not for now, it's fixed, but we're
Must
good.
have been significant, huh?
We found one.
Where was that on Dayton?
We found one on the public side.
500 block.
That's
East
up
side.
on Grove Street.
Yeah. So, yeah, weren't too surprised, we found other lead there.
We put on our side.
I think from my records, that chunk of Dayton Street is the only one we've never really touched with
Yeah,
the.
between Dayton, on Dayton, between Grove and Walnut has never been touched.
Yes, that's the one I think is the only one I found that's never had any street project extend
And
on
it's
that
kind of
block.
scary where it goes underneath that culvert or whatever is there.
Could be why, right?
Right by the porch where the railing grows into the tree.
Oh, yeah.
Our annual, consumer confidence report is complete and sent to the paper as well as the Facebook, little bit
Oh,
of
yeah.
drama we had there, and, where else did we put it? Oh, it's posted in public locations, library, take center, et cetera, City Hall. Next month, we're gonna be testing for PFAS, so that's gonna be quarterly, 3/4 out of this year, are requirements that came down from the DNR for us. So we'll have, I guess, information soon. It's gonna be pricey, and they gave it to us after budget season. So DNR didn't put any requirements out until November, December.
So what's that mean we have to do?
Wastewater or water?
It's gonna be water. On the water side, we have to test for PFAS at every well.
Is that because the city asked you to do it, or is that, no?
The DNR just kind
Separate.
of blanketed
Okay, good.
everybody with
Okay,
requirements.
but we are checking to see if anything's coming from the landfill. right
Yeah,
now.
we're still doing our VOC
Yeah.
regular testing on well 5.
And still no sign?
Nothing,
Okay,
no.
good.
What are we doing it monthly?
Quarterly.
Yeah. And then we also, I guess it goes for water and sewer side, but There's a payment service that approached us, it's called LIWAP, I can never remember these terms, it's just the county does assistance for, they used to do just for heat.
Low
And
income
energy,
water
yeah,
assistance program.
and now they added water to it, so apparently every other utility but us around here was on that. We do nothing. Customers go if they need help to Dodge County, they bring in their bills, sign up their paperwork, and then they send Nicole a check every
County.
month. What's that?
The county sends a check?
I believe
This,
it's,
yeah, it's the government program that does this. So they send a check with everybody on it. We had multiple customers ask for it. Yeah, there's not much we have to do, but we figured it would be pretty time saving in the end when, those certain 2030 go to tax roll every year and all the rest of that. So landlords don't get angry and any other good stuff, so. So that's all for water for now.
Wastewater report.
We had our operator, Ryan Miller, pass another exam, his phosphorus exam. Again for both, but our audit information is complete. As far as we know, we have, so that'd be audit and PSC reports. They have all their information. They spent a couple days here asking questions, so we'll wait for that. I believe they usually present to you guys in June.
It depends when they get it done.
Yeah, June, July meeting, somewhere in
Is
there.
that reference still there?
Yes, yep, same crew. We hosted a Diggers Hotline Training Seminar here. We haven't seen those for a while. Diggers doesn't do them anymore, so we invited, and we had DPW here, some of Town and Country, our crew. So they got a little safety refresher, but we were able to do it on site here a couple weeks ago. Let's see here. We had a supply of lift station pumps that were sitting, I don't even know how to explain that. They've been sitting back there as spares for years. About a year ago, I said we had an issue. One of those, we went to grab one of those spares and put it in a lift station. And it was about 7 years old, but it was presumed bad from manufacturing, but then out of warranty. So kind of a loss. So we went through all of those pumps just to make sure. We sent them all with Sabo. They went through everything, seals, everything to make sure they're actually functional when we want to use them. But yeah, the last one was a loss and a lesson learned, I guess. So out of warranty.
Just because it's been sitting around so long.
Well, the first one we tried to put in, they assumed it was bad from manufacturing, but we never would have known that because, you didn't rotate them or. Yeah, it's just, it is.
It was for some reason it was purchased and set on the floor to some day, for a rainy day, and the rainy day came and it didn't work. Ouch.
Yeah.
No, that's it, that's work.
All right, and then we just talked about it, but as far as I know, the Green Bay Drive repairs are complete. So I'm waiting for their report. Obviously, I will be checking on those addresses, but I don't feel like theirs was on the list, but I'll find televising for those. And,
Repairs are done too, and they went in and they closed all those gaps. Huh?
yep,
How many were there? 18 like we thought?
it was 10, I believe, off the top of my head.
10 of them, okay.
Yeah, it's 10 repairs, but yeah, they went in and, I saw part of it, they did their little
Great.
robot tool cutter and,
They haven't seen the final,
no, the final televising I didn't get yet.
they didn't even do it yet?
I think they did the televising, but then they prepare a big report and they send the
The
file.
company was really good, I thought.
Yeah, so we took care of the problems that they would have, so we did what we always do. We did the right thing.
Yeah,
We always do that.
Well, we usually, if we're given a chance, but if people go out and call Town and Country to dig up the hole, then we don't take a chance.
good to go.
So it should be a good meeting next month or what? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know, everybody got those blue letters, they're all happening, and a couple of them called me, and I said,
Well, there's
Oh,
calm yourself.
I think Annie put a public service announcement on Facebook. It's just there to offer
Yeah,
you
right.
education, that your true letter is your responsibility. And you have opportunities to take insurance out for that, whether it is with that company or you call your.
And that I
So
think
you
it did.
call your own,
I
take
think,
your own.
I've heard from a couple people,
Mine's covered in my homeowner's insurance, I'm already covered.
yeah,
Yeah.
There you go.
and I've had two people that since they got that, just contact their homeowners is a lot cheaper than that was.
Yeah. Right, man, so that.
Depends on your deductible. You mean, do your own research and anything, but
I'm lucky enough to have Green Bay Drive in my ward.
I'm trying to say.
No extra charge.
yeah.
Next is discussion process regarding Veolia, formerly utility service company, well contracts.
They never got back to me with anything, so we tabled this last month. I got information out to them. They were gonna send me things. I sent 2 reminders and I haven't gotten anything, so
When are they up? Thought we were almost done with it.
we got 3 years. So they were kind of negotiating with us more or less they're trying to push us out of it. Was what was.
But we already paid for it.
Well, annually we paid for it. I mean, we paid the
Oh,
bulk of it up front. There'd have to be some pretty serious number crunching happening there, and they weren't too willing to work with us on the well issue on well 4 either,
They will pull the well
early.
early.
They told me for a fee now.
Oh,
Yeah, now they added,
initially that was not brought up. Initially, they were willing to pull the well in 24 instead of 25 is when their contract would require it.
Mhm.
And we said, this is silly. Why wouldn't you just pull it in
As a-
24,
yeah,
like 9
all
months?
new, fresh, start
Right.
fresh.
And they seemed amenable to that, but again, it's,
I'm now told, the last thing I got was that way they can do that, but it'll come with a fee, an additional
Why would we
cost.
have to pay an extra fee if it's already in the
That's
contract?
what we're trying to, well, we just wanted to swap years, is all we wanted to do, was have them pull that a year early, but
and
still
that
in
would have took money
contract.
off that cost of the
We're
project.
not talking to them, we're talking to their lawyer.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, they have to put something in writing for you to respond to.
Well,
At this
it's,
point,
yeah, they keep saying like there's a fee, but they won't tell me what that fee will be. So I don't think anybody knows. So I'm still waiting for documents on them. I little to no correspondence.
I think it's safe to say they want out of the contract. They want to be done with it, but they're just trying to figure out what they can do in that.
Mhm.
So they put something in writing and, again, they're a big company now and not a small firm like they once were when you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess whatever you would like to,
Well, I guess there's no possible action
Yeah.
there because we don't have anything to go.
we don't have, we have any correspondence.
So that'll be on the agenda next,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Next is, possible regarding industrial limits for mercury.
One of the big things that DNR's been talking with us about, I just submitted a annual mercury report for this year, is looking more closely at our industries and at least eliminating them as a potential supplier of mercury. We don't know. We have mercury coming in kind of all over the place sometimes. We're not really exceeding. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low, but just to regularly test industries. I talked to, Wisconsin Rural Water and then the city of Oshkosh. I found some information. I talked to their pretreatment specialists. They're just kind of fans of getting a little cost recouped on testing, just kind of seeing where it's coming from and using their, like we would have 4 or 5 pretreatment customers, test them, assess them the fee to test them twice a year, just as kind of a analysis, and then you have a baseline and some information from those companies as well.
Is that what this is?
So I put that in there, that's a bill, that's what it costs us to send our own mercury samples in.
So essentially, we want the companies to pay for the testing rather than.
Yeah, so I mean, twice a year, yeah, mercury's $124 here for us to send in. We can't do this one in-house. So yeah, we would be saying we'd wanna, bill that to
So we're not
them.
asking them for a lot of money.
No, I'll bill them twice a year. So this cost and then maybe a little bit, I mean, it takes work for us to, put these samples together, ship them, package them, everything else.
$300 admin cost on top.
Yeah, that's $300 admin cost.
Have you had any issues in biosolids?
No,
Mercury?
that's the weird part. No, we had a unusual sample in December that's gonna be a little rough for us on our permit, we're told, coming up. We had a,
What could possibly be putting mercury into the system of any of the industries around here? I mean, I can't think of anything.
well, and that'd be a good elimination strategy.
Trust me,
We had an
Piggly Wiggly
It's
doing all the
12.
refrigeration over again.
influent,
The plumber.
and an 89 effluent.
It winds up in the.
there you go.
Trust me,
I think it's the air in the,
people
Yeah,
freezing
standard
things. that's
yeah,
all.
we had them tested twice, but they're not changing.
Mercury doesn't ever go away.
Somebody's filling in column there.
Yeah.
So what are you looking
I
for?
don't know.
I guess you guys, if we can come up with some sort of a Mercury schedule for, or
How
I guess
many
allow us to
industries
do
are you
this,
talking?
4 or 5. So at a 124 is the price of the Mercury test right now,
$200.
package it all, sample, collect.
So the question is, do we wanna charge each industry $200 twice a year to sample for mercury? 4 or 5 industries.
Yes,
A motion?
I'll make a motion to charge the businesses the fee for doing the mercury testing.
So that would be
Industrial.
industry, Seneca, not Seneca,
We're talking like 5,
two old fashioned facilities,
Metalcraft,
Metalcraft on there, Metalcraft, Mac, and,
Well, police and real.
they haven't been on the pretreatment program. I heard they used to be though.
What's Metalcraft been doing out there, man? Will I see that vacuum truck out there
All
periodically?
the time.
Yeah.
Then there's a bungee cord
They have
holding
to let
everything
you know,
together.
because doesn't your sampler comes right out of there?
Yeah, if it's the one on that west side of the road.
Remember that day I called you, so what the heck are they doing?
Oh, that was a long time ago.
you're talking about Metalcraft.
Metalcraft,
I wonder if that is something, that rumbling noise we get at 5 o'clock at night all the time.
So we have a motion on the table to charge $200 twice a year
Are you
for,
sure you're charging enough of them? There are other possibilities.
well, that's up to her discretion.
Well, yeah, it's
Plumber,
elimination. What the DNR wants us to do is look at industrial customers first as part of our progressive planning for Mercury.
Start with
We've done industrial surveys, we've done commercial surveys. I've done surveys with the schools.
Nobody uses
I got them, they did surveys for me, so that was like light bulb usage, are you recycling? So I've surveyed, and the dentists and pretty much everybody. I sent out hundreds of surveys.
And what chance of the canning factory having any of it?
They're not really on our pre-treatment. I guess when I talked to Oshkosh, he said, just start with anybody on your pre-treatment program. Like, just start with that and then you can kind of, work in chunks and, yeah.
it. So we got a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? And did we set that limit at $200 on that mercury? Is that enough?
I think it covered, that's, transportation, labor, bottles, shipping, materials. I think that's all in there sufficiently, but
Any
not
further
overdone.
discussion? Let's take roll call
Alderperson Bob Smith,
Aye.
Alderperson Roger Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Engel.
Aye.
Commissioner Passberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks,
Aye.
Commissioner Bushke.
then. Aye.
And then I just wanna check we have the right meeting date, because we had to wiggle.
Right.
It is say April 11th.
Next meeting, April 11th. Everyone, I know there was some, this month, didn't it? Thought it was this month or something. All right. April 11th, 4 o'clock here.
I'll make a motion with.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?